Welcome back to the Scorpio channel. My name is Laura. If you're new to my channel, I'm going to do a general message for Scorpio. Know that energy is fluid. Roles can be reversed. Just interpret the message as it best resonates with you. Also know on this channel and all my channels, I like to dive deep within the reading. I look at everything, but we take time to look at the spiritual blocks, the shadows, see how they play it as karmic themes to help you understand why everything's happening the way that it is. Why? Because a lot of times we know that the person has feelings for us, just the same way that we would know that our parent loves us. We don't know why it looks the way that it does. We don't know how it really affects us. And when I say affects us, it's how it comes out in our habits and our behaviorisms when we're around people and situations that are imbalanced. Because if we knew, we'd be able to integrate the spiritual lesson. See, there's many different realities that play out at one time, but when you're stuck in a reality that makes you perceive that there's something wrong with you, like you're not worthy, you're not good enough, you don't have enough, any lack energy is actually out of alignment with the laws of the universe. The laws of the universe are the same laws that God has. They're all based on unconditional love. So it's what's best for everyone involved. It's about getting to the higher levels of consciousness, such as forgiveness, compassion. All emotions that are derived from unconditional love are of God, are of Jesus, right? Again, the energy of Jesus is that. It's depicted in the character of Jesus. That's the energy of unconditional love. And that's why we're down here. We're down here to actually depict the character of unconditional love. But we wouldn't know what that was because a lot of us were born in imbalanced environments. So what we think is unconditional love, Spirit says, nah, that's conditional. Because we'll say, no, no, no. If that person really loved me, they would show up for me when I needed them to show up for me. They would act a certain way. They would do a certain thing. They would just know what I needed. And the Spirit says, that's a delusional type of love. And that's, again, an all perfect type of love. And the only type of love that you can actually get that from is from embodying the energy of God. And that's the energy of unconditional love. By doing what you love, becoming what you love, by giving and receiving of love, it actually allows you to transcend the limitations of your mind. You can quantum jump into a whole other reality. And there's many different realities that play out at one time. So your level of consciousness is based on the experiences that you lived and the people that you've been around. And so, sickness and disease is inherited because we inherit those habits and behaviorisms. So when you're born into a karmic covenant, it means that you were born into a family that had spiritual blockages and spiritual blockages that are held within the ancestral in that energy, well, causes fragmentation. And that fragmentation means that you're susceptible to negative energies. You're a spiritual being having a human experience. So you're a spiritual being, meaning you attract spiritual beings, whether it's light energy or whether it's dark energy. You've heard that the universe always brings you the people and the situations and the experiences that are going to change your mind and your heart. But when we're stuck in this perception based on the fragmentation, we're seeing things through a distorted perception. And that means a lot of times we're not grounded. We're seeing things from a previous experience and we're preparing ourselves to deal with the same experience again. And this is how we unconsciously recreate the same undesirable life experiences, which are called karmic loops. Now, karmic loop, again, is just the same exact experience, just with a different person or in a different environment. Is that you continually live this karmic theme. And the karmic theme, again, is one that keeps you out of alignment with your true energy, which is the energy of source, which is the energy of God, because there is no separation between you and your creator. And the reason for that is because of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit that lives inside of you allows you to be connected to God at all times. And that information that comes from the higher self is that actual energy of God. The problem is that our environments take us out of that energy. So it's really important if you have ancestral karma to get rooted in the Holy Spirit so that you fill your temple up with, again, positive light energy so that no negative energy can occupy your temple, right? Because your body is the temple for spirit to dwell in. And when I'm talking about spirit, I'm talking about the Holy Spirit, okay? Talking about what keeps us connected to God. That allows us to actually be prophetic. It allows us to have clear cognizance because the spiritual war on consciousness is one of that's happening in the environment. And that will allow us to have to, again, put on our armor. And when we put on our armor, we are rooted in the Holy Spirit. All right. So, a lot of times the separation from self is, like I said, is what's creating these imbalances, and not just imbalances with that happening in your mind, but it actually energetically makes you feel lethargic, makes you feel tired. When you're spiritually tired, no matter how much sleep you get, it's never going to be enough sleep. You need spiritual nutrition. And spiritual nutrition is how you can apply these spiritual principles to your life to transcend the limitations of your spiritual blockages, right? All right, let's jump in and just see what the energy is. Now I think that these are educational stories that play out within the cards. You may resonate, you may not resonate. Um, I am prophetic, but I do not say that this is anyone's message because it's collective, it's so I say it's educational purposes. All right, let's see what the energy is that you need, right? Before we even look at relationship. But when you have spiritual blockages, you will see it play out within your relationship as well, which is really frustrating when you're in a karmic loop with a person that cares about you, but they continually sabotage the connection. Or when you have so much trauma based on being in a relationship with someone that was toxic, and then you get into a new relationship and you actually make the same experience happen. And I had that with a client yesterday where, like, she's in a great relationship, but she's looking for problems and she's looking on problems based on a previous relationship. I said, you're going to create the same exact dynamic because you continually need that reassurance. You continually or telling that person, I am insecure, whether or not that's what she's trying to do or not. Obviously, most people are not trying to do that. But we tell people who we are by how we treat ourselves, how we act, how we hold ourselves. And a lot of times we're unconscious to that. We are unconscious of what we show people. We say in our minds, we're showing something completely different. And the spirit says, because everyone's coming at a different level of consciousness. That's why it's really important to just be true to yourself. Be organic. Be true. Understand you're not $100 bill. Not everyone's going to love you. But when you're true, people could say, I don't really like that person, but at least they're, beating to their own drum. At least I know that they're not a phony baloney. I think that that's the worst that you can actually be when you don't embrace your true self, right? It's about being true to yourself. Again, not everyone's going to be your cheerleader, and that's okay. It weeds out what shouldn't be in your life if you love yourself enough, because then you'll make the arrangements to, again, create the balance that you need for yourself. And balance means to create an environment that allows you to be grounded, right? Not ruminating on what the people are thinking, what they're going to do, how they're going to do it. Who cares? Spirit says, who cares? All right, let's look at your energy. Let's look and see what you may need for the day. It's never a day, let's face it. It's usually karmic lessons or a few days, weeks, months. Spirit has no time. But if there's a karmic lesson that you're dealing with, you better believe it's if it's something that you've been living with your whole life, like not being able to create boundaries for yourself, that's going to continue to play out until you actually learn that spiritual lesson. And it's going to be something that is reoccurring. So that it's the reading would be timeless. That means until you actually learn that lesson. And learning it is not just integrating it, which is I know what I keep doing. It's actually embodying the new consciousness to allow yourself to see yourself differently so that you actually see the world differently. Because there's many different realities that play at one time. Again, the spiritual blockage just keeps you blocked in this limited perception that takes you out of your true identity. So Spirit's saying, let's see the energy. Look at this. Back off. The signs are with you already. Dreams, mercy, cleansing. I see a lot of healing energy here. Okay, and then we see my energy creates my reality. What I focus on, I will manifest. When I lean on the faith of the universe, peace becomes real. Shadow work is one of the wounds, collisions or belief styles, attitudes, and energies. Okay. And then what we see, the end of a tough cycle approaches, adjustments are required. Guilt and shame, and you are good enough. So what I see here is a lot of healing, like I said. And I say that um, because shadow work, number one, shadow work is reoccurring emotional triggers that are unresolved conflicts, behaviors that feel out of alignment with that higher self, that God part of self, and they manifest as unexplained anger, fear, shame, which is self from self-criticism, revealing hidden parts of you that need to be seen, healed, and integrated. Again, the fragmentation that I was talking about, that detachment, that disassociation, again, that needs to be healed, but not just healed, we need to heal it, but then we also need to be delivered. We need, because again, we need to fill ourselves up. So that's what that's shadow work. So why I say that is also because what's on the table is guilt and shame, clearing those karmic cycles. Now, guilt and shame are obviously when we self-sabotage ourselves, right? When we get in our own way and we block ourselves from having it. So we tend to do something bad. People that are spiritually blocked tend to live from their addictions, tend to live from their emotional self, not the higher self. And it's because when you live in survival for long periods of time, it drains your energy. You feel spiritually tired. And that draining makes us do things. Again, look for things outside of ourselves to feel whole, just to feel energetically balanced. Because, like I said, spiritual issues drain you. So, Spirit's saying, you have people around you that don't want you to heal. And why I say that is back off. And when I say back off, it's because Spirit's saying there's the cleansing. Like that cleansing is getting people out of your life, but it's not just that. It's like this is what tells me everything, which is the collisions of beliefs, styles, attitudes, and energies. So you may have people that just don't like how you do your job. They might not like the way, like a characteristic about yourself. And Spirit saying this is about being true to yourself. Goes back to, again, you're not $100 bill. Not everyone's going to like you. This is about you choosing you. Cleansing is getting people out of your life and not just at like this is like out of your life, but it's also setting the appropriate boundaries to do so. Because, like I said, you can't control the environment. You can only control you. So I feel like some people might not like your job, some people may not like you. You may be attached to family as well that want to utilize your energy. If you were the healer of the family, well, they want you to remain that healer of the family, which means utilize all your time, energy, focus money, your resources to, the betterment of everyone involved instead of creating yourself, you know, when, and why I say that is when shadow work is needed. Shadow work is needed when we tend to undervalue ourselves, when we don't like parts of ourselves. When we don't like parts of ourselves, it comes out in our behaviorisms as like shameful acts. And that might be where you run around with a lot of different people. Maybe again, you're not satisfied with one relationship, right? Maybe you're connected to somebody that is more of that person, and but being connected to someone that runs around with a lot of other people is going to make you feel bad, and then you're going to say things and act a certain way because you're triggered because the person does not treat you well. Well, again, that's keeping yourself stuck in self-sabotaging behaviorisms of trying to make a person change instead of you changing, is what Spirit's saying. Whenever shadow work with guilt and shame, well, then you know that the person is wearing a lot of masks. So this may not be your energy. It may be, again, the person that you're connected to, which has energy all over you. So even though I'm tapping into your energy, I feel like you're not feeding this. I feel like you're connected, like I said, to somebody that is. It's just there's a part of you that's like, back off. I'm not inviting you into my life. I am not inviting you into my life because, hey, they're coming out of a place of guilt and shame. So, person that is coming out of that energy, are they able to nurture you? Are they able to, well, Spirit's saying like adjustments are required. It's the end of a tough cycle where if you were connected to someone that just resisted this connection and gave you a real hard time, it's because of what they were dealing with, their own guilt, their own shame from previous relationship that they never even healed. So they brought all their baggage into this connection. And so Spirit says this is a time of cleansing, whether that's healing, where you have acceptance and you find your balance, or people just move out of your life. It's a time that, again, needing to integrate the spiritual lesson. And the reason why is because not everyone's supposed to be with you. And Spirit says you already know the answer to that. The signs are already inside of you. Now, whether you want to listen to that, Spirit says, karma is based on it. So you may say, well, none of these people deserve, or especially this person that you were connected to deserves to be in my life because, hey, they're sitting in a place of guilt because of how they treated you, but they're not just you. I feel like they've repeated this. And I also believe that you grew up with kind of the same energies, well, the guilt and shame. Now, that doesn't mean that if you were abused by your parents and and you weren't allowed to find yourself, you would then look for the answers outside of yourself. And when you look for the answers outside of yourself to be whole, it tends to lead you to a place of shame. And the reason why is because we can't obtain what we need outside of ourselves. We need to cultivate inside of ourselves. And guilt and shame are very heavy, negative, low vibration. And it happens mainly from when you grow up in an environment where there's betrayal. When there's betrayal, you're already growing up in a survival mode. And so when we're living in a survival mode, that we become drained, we become tired. No matter how much sleep you get, it's not going to be enough sleep. And so Spirit's saying, it's it's normal to then look for the things outside if you don't know how to cultivate those spiritual energies inside of you, which again, guilt and fear need to be integrated, and then those energies need to be transmuted. They need to be alchemized. Otherwise, you're going to continue to attract people that, can't really give you anything because they're stuck in the same energy of guilt and shame. Remember, you attract who you need. So whether you one time you had dealt with guilt and shame and now you mastered it, but you have not embodied a whole new consciousness. You're still not seeing the results, so you're still attracting that energy. Spirit's saying is this is all about having to come to a place of mercy. Mercy is actually forgiveness when a person doesn't really deserve forgiveness, is what Spirit's saying. It's like because of what people do. When people are born into families that there's guilt and shame, it binds them to this lower energy. Then these lower energies create fragmentation, and then you become susceptible to these negative energies, these negative attachments. So is we have to again come to a place of forgiveness, which is mercy, in order to be able to um, be in alignment with these higher energies, because Spirit says when you lean on the faith of the universe, peace becomes real, because what you're realizing is the universe is always wanting to support you. God is always wanting to support you. That the universe brings you the people, the situations, the experiences that are going to support you in order to actually achieve your dreams. But what needs to happen is forgiveness. What needs to happen is cleansing. What needs to happen is to let go of the people that have different beliefs, styles, and attitudes that tend to trigger you, that tend to make you feel bad about yourself. No one can make you feel bad about yourself when you feel good about yourself. Understand that. Spirit says when you really love yourself and you're true to yourself, a path unfolds while you're on it. So you're continuously meeting people that are going to support you. Doesn't mean that you're not going to have haters. You do, and the better that you get in life and the more that you evolve, the more haters you tend to get, because most people are not vibing on that high vibration. They're surviving. They're not thriving. When you're in the spiritual energy and you drop guilt and shame, then and you fill yourself again with this divine energy, and that is what happens when you're doing shadow work. You are integrating the spiritual lesson. You are able to see a different version of yourself. And Spirit's saying it. So you're not changing the environment, you're changing yourself by realizing that you are good enough, that you can live your dreams. It's not that you can't have your dreams, but what you need to get rid of is the people that can't give you anything, that want to keep you in a place of guilt and shame because they're in an energy of guilt and shame. Guilt and shame, like I said, are the heaviest energies, because when you have guilt and shame, you are always going to attract people that put you back in that energy. So it really, again, the only way to cleanse is to do the shadow work. And so that's the issue. And that's hard because you have people in your life that really don't want you to heal. And that's because people like to utilize your energy for what they can utilize it for. So, and that's everybody, that's society. People get comfortable. When people change, when you change the dynamic of not just your life, but a lot of people around you. So if you were coming from a lower vibration, giving all your time and energy away because you felt guilted to, you felt, well, I'm a bad person, so I should do it, because that's what happens with guilt and shame. You wind up satisfying yourself on an emotional level, but it then makes you then feel responsible then to have to take care of other people, to have to do things that you don't want, then which puts you back into a cycle of almost justifying why you do what you do. So it's like a person that doesn't grow themselves. So they get their happiness from doing for other people. But then what they feel is they still feel empty because the people that they're doing for are not giving to them. So then, in order for them to stay in that energy, because they are guilted and shamed to do so, is to go out and, overspend, or go out and, have sex with a bunch of people and then not care because they're like, well, I'm living this way, so why should I care about anyone else? So again, it just keeps the person locked. So I feel like what's influencing your energy is that you've been connected to a person that there is love there, but if you were to be connected to them, like let them in your life, they would block you from your dreams. And this is what you know. And the spirit says they represent the shadow work that you need. And that why it's coming up within your energy so prominently is because it's a time for cleansing. It's time for cleansing to release the guilt and the shame, to break that karmic cycle because that's being in a relationship with someone that emotionally can't give to you because they have not integrated the spiritual lesson that is going to keep you bound. And they're not going to see things your way. They're not, because you're going to be triggering their fear. So you can't do anything with that except for have mercy for the person, is what Spirit's saying, because they're just not on a high vibration. Now, let's see why this energy was so prominent, like where it's not really telling us about you creating right now. What it's saying is beware of this person, And so I feel like your energy is good. The only thing that could be a problem is this person. But I want to see why we got this message so much. I love you. That's why this person's stuck in a place of regretting lying to you. I feel like when they have the opportunity to actually be with you, they downplayed their feelings. Um, they tried to bury themselves in their work to forget about you. And they just, at this point in time, they feel you leaving them behind because obviously a lot of time has transpired. You're not doing anything. I feel like for a long time they tried to justify why they were the way that they were. But it all comes back to them being like, "Well, you know what? You were not an easy person for this person. Were they attracted to you? Yes. Was there chemistry? Yes. But were you an easy person for no, because you hold to a certain standard. And I feel like part of that was I'm not going to be guilted into being with someone that's not going to bring me anything except for pain and put me in that energy of shame. And that's the thing. So this person wanted you to kind of like look the other way on some of their behaviors. And the thing is, you did not do that. You were not an easy person, but they still have this spiritual and emotional connection. And what they say is like, you were real. You were so real. You were so real, it freaked them out. And it first triggered them because they did have shame, they did have guilt and spirit saying, but at the end of the day, you were the best thing that happened to them, that because you were real, like you showed them an aspect of themselves that needs to be healed. And at the end of the day, that's what relationships are. This person wants you to forgive them. One day at the time, they couldn't let you get close to them because, hey, they were so ashamed of who they are, you know? And so they want to be more than friends with you. And that's the issue right now. They replay your conversations over and over and over in their head. Um, I just feel like this connection has put them in a place where they realize I need to heal. I need to heal because I have feelings for you, but they are still suffering with guilt and shame. And when that happens, we have to say, well, how is that playing out in their life? Because if we're dealing with guilt and shame, okay, what are you doing because you have guilt and shame? What do you need healing from? We have to ask ourselves that question. And Spirit is saying, well, their inner child was wounded when their parents couldn't respond to them. So again, there's a part of them that's like, I'm codependent. I'm codependent. And because I get into a relationship where, you know, if I'm codependent, I'm getting into a relationship with most people that are codependent. And it leads to a lot of bad behaviorisms because no one can be your everything. So this person may come into a relationship and put the person on a pedestal and then think that that person's going to fix them and heal them. And then when that person doesn't, then they go out and they cheat and they do something that justifies, that, hey, you didn't satisfy me, you didn't fix me. Codependency is we get into relationships like that when there's fragmentation, when we feel like there's parts of ourselves that don't work. Right. So you see a lot of people in relationships where they say that they're with a narcissist, but that narcissist makes all the money. Right. So when you are in a situation like that, then you're bound to like being in a relationship that emotionally you're not getting anything, and it kind of like binds you to that those inner childhood wounds. And so this person continually gets into these codependent relationships, whether they're the person that makes all the money and then but emotionally they can't give, or they're the person that doesn't have any money and they're emotionally giving and they don't get anything back. So it's never a balanced connection. So what happens is that they live fragmented, which is they might be with one person to emotionally get their needs met, and then another person to financially get their needs met, and then still have somebody else on the back burner because they have major trust issues. Because a person that has shame, there's a part of them that is rejecting themselves, that doesn't like themselves, that thinks that they're bad, and their actions and their behaviorisms are actually in alignment with that because they don't really believe that they could be loved fully and wholly by one person. And that's the problem here. And so Spirit's saying it's like it's not that they don't love, it's like they do love. It's that they have issues, They always felt that they had a higher calling in life, and they feel like the connection brings them more clarity on it. So whatever you're doing in the environment, I feel like you get a lot of attention. This person, like there's a part of them that sees you as having a big soul's life's path, and they want that. And that's because they're fragmented. And people that are fragmented have not created themselves fully because we are not our wounds. So the guilt and shame needs to be replaced with identity, right? Because we are not our experiences, we are not our things. We're actually the energy of love, and we get to become that energy. So I feel like you're awakening this person that, hey, there's other ways to live. And that's not by being in a relationship all the time. This is more about, again, healing inner child wounds. So because I keep seeing this, I feel like you're also needing to heal your inner child wounds because we're a mirror of whom what comes into our life, and being connected to someone that's stuck in guilt and shame, and you might have had guilt and shame as well, being made to feel responsible for other people, and that could mean you grew up in a dysfunctional household, or maybe someone was sick. So you were just conditioned to believe that. Not all the time were we beaten into like submission. Sometimes it's just being born into like an imbalanced dynamic that you played that role. And in playing that role of self-sacrificing and overgiving and overgiving and overgiving, person can't stay in that energy. What they're going to do eventually is do outside things to fill themselves, because we're not here to give our energy away that way. We're here to be the expressions of God, to have that connection, to walk a spiritual walk so that we can integrate the spiritual lessons so we can evolve into the highest state of consciousness so that we're actually good enough to go to heaven. A lot of times, we we I think that pretty much God forgives everyone. However, like we have to like integrate the whole spiritual lessons and being in a place of guilt and shame. you're going to live nothing but undesirable life experiences because there's a sense of feeling not worthy, not good enough, and all these lower energies, which is completely out of alignment with the law of the universe. And so, Spirit's saying, knowing that. And so, you're projecting your own fears and limitations onto me. So, I feel like this person projects a lot because when a person doesn't like who they are, that's what they think that other people, see them as. Where you can be connected to someone that may not like what you do for a living, or they may not like the way you dress or how, or an element about you, but still like you. It's like I don't agree with that element, but I said I like you as a person. Like people can actually find that common denominator. But when a person is continually projecting their fears onto you, it's because they are suffering with guilt and shame and they feel as if you make them feel that way. And you can make them feel that way by holding to a certain standard because you no longer are in that energy of guilt and shame, where the person can't guilt or shame you. And when people can't guilt and shame you, they can't take your energy. You remain like in full control of your spiritual sovereignty. And that is a lot of times what people don't want you to do. If they had you in a place of, again, that guilt, like made responsible. Whereas what I'm feeling like your person is in this energy, not even from you. However, did you have like deal with consequences because of it? Yes. They put, they project it onto you. And that's because of previous experiences. It has nothing to do with you, but understand when a person has a spiritual blockage, you see what you look for. And so again, it was like love blocks. So as long as the love blocks, this person is always going to be like create so much turbulence in the relationship because everything's going to be a trigger. Everything's going to be a trigger until they actually integrate that. So, and that everything's a trigger, they're going to project everything. So, what happened is that this person, even though they're codependent, there's this desire to be like free, a desire to be impulsive, have addictive behavior. And that's because, hey, well, I feel guilted and again, shamed into, you know, uh, acting a certain way which is out of balance. This is when a person gets into a relationship and they come on like 100 miles an hour and they're your everything and they're so codependent. And then eventually, once they get comfortable, they revert back into who they truly are because it's an unrealistic expectation to make someone become everything that you need. One person can't do that. Only God can do that. People can come into your life and enhance your life. They can teach you, but they cannot. This person tends to go into relationships 1,000 miles an hour, and then the relationship's shallow. And it's because, again, they can't maintain. They cannot maintain. And that's what codependency is. So the relationship is on, off, on, off. They come into your life again, get you comfortable only to like leave as soon as you're comfortable. And it's all about controlling you and dominating you, which then puts them in this higher vibration. So they feel, I'm not saying it does, it's because again, that's very toxic behavior, but it feeds their ego. So that again, because they can't sustain themselves on an emotional level. Person that's in guilt and shame, again, the heaviest energy that's going to create a lot of self-sabotaging behaviors because the person believes that they can't have it. So they overcompensate unconsciously. So that they come on real strong in the relationship. Again, once they have you hook, line, and sinker, they revert back to their old self because who are they? Well, they think that they're their wounds. They haven't cultivated that. And that's what the issue is. So, you not having the same energy and moving out of this energy is really consuming them. It's because obsessive energy goes along with this addictive energy, and that's it's all about them control. So there's a part of this person for a long time that the relationships would again be on off, But then when they would be on, they create so much emotion that it's like a whirlwind, right? That you get caught up emotionally because there is love, there is passion, there is, but this person's so fragmented, they're not going to be able to really give you what you need. And that actually keeps you stuck in a place of guilt and shame. And that's why Spirit's saying you've actually already healed them because you've integrated the spiritual lesson. However, this person that's a soulmate has not integrated them yet. And so, again, they're going to come into your life and they're going to want to, like, again, stir things up the same way that they did before. Thing is, I don't believe that they can. And so, Spirit says it's not because that they don't have feelings, it's because when a person has not healed those things, there'll always be a sense that, abandonment, and they will not allow themselves to be that vulnerable. And so intimacy creates vulnerability. So as soon as the relationship gets really like deep, because this is a deep relationship, but when it gets like too comfortable, too like consistent, then this person like runs away. And it's because of their wounds. But then that triggers your guilt and shame. It's like you get angry and be like, again, why am I with somebody that treats me bad? And then feeling guilty about it, and the spirit saying it just keeps you in this negative lower energy, and it's because of this person. And it's like, so what happened is I feel like you just got tired of this person wearing a mask, got tired of them, and being the fact that it's like they're coming into your life, they're leaving your life, it's again, you don't know whether they're coming and going. So it's like it makes you feel like your life is upside down, and understand that makes it very easy to control you, right? So that thinking that, well, that they're in your life, that hey, that you're going to assume that they really do care. And it's not that they don't care, but they're in such a low energy that they're going to be real selfish about it. And so you got tired. You got tired of them assuming that you were going to, put up with it. And so I feel like you hit your limit. You got tired of it. And the fact that this person, like, once, again, that you would get comfortable, then all of a sudden they would have time for other people and other things. You became like almost demoted. So you went from being put up on a pedestal to which is not realistic for a person that needs healing, because they're again trying to become everything that you want them to become. And that means that they're not in their true self, they're wearing a mask only for you to let your guard down, let them into your life, let them be comfortable, for them to revert back to their true self because they have not healed the guilt and the shame, to then act out in a shameful manner. And then that puts you in that guilt and shame, is what Spirit's saying. And this person assumed that you were going to stay in this weird, like really negative karmic cycle. And that's not what happened. So, because you got tired of like, really, I don't really even feel like you let me into your life. Well, they are not going to let you truly into their life because they don't like who they are. And what you see is that there's nothing really there. Because if there's guilt and shame there, where's your identity? What the identity is within this person's habits and behaviorisms. And what they do is they have shameful behaviorisms. So what you're going to see is that the only type of relationship that they could really offer you is a shallow one. And it's not because in their mind that they don't like you or love you, it's that's their capacity of being able to. And it's family patterns. This person grew up that way. So they have money issues where they might make money and then spend astronomical amounts of money, again, live outside of their budget to again make themselves feel better about themselves. That's also going to put this person in a place of shame if they can't pay their bills and they're driving around in like a brand new sports car and like going out every night. It's like they're living beyond their means again, and that creates a lot of anxiety because again, they have to keep up with the illusion that they're someone that they're not, because again they're walking around with this guilt and shame And they're suppressing their emotions with everything that's outside of themselves. So that means food too. And so there's a fear of like this change, but when you don't change and you're sitting in this energy of filled of fear and shame, well, again, then this person, then takes unnecessary risks. And these risks are ones that always lead to betrayal. And that's because they don't heal what they need to do. And so in order to be in a relationship with them, you have to be put into a place of disempowerment. So when you did not do that, they saw it as you putting judgment on them because you would not conform to their old habits. And so that's the thing. This person's stuck in a place of fear. And instead of them asking for forgiveness, they wasted a lot of time sitting in this energy, putting themselves in this unnecessary, weird competition, when meanwhile they had feelings for you the whole time, and now they're stressed out because what's happening? And is what they're seeing is again, there's this lack past life connection with you where they decided to keep it in a place of imbalance that's now turning into this place of trauma. It's kicking up all their inner child wounds because, hey, you're not going to stay in this place of guilt and shame. So now they're in a place of sadness, which is what guilt and shame brings. So instead of this person really dealing with it, what are they doing? There's a lot of addictive behavior. So what you see is that this person like has not changed. And that's why Spirit's saying, be careful because this person's going to come back. And when they come back, there's still these major trust issues. This person again, like it would be a karmic contract because they haven't healed anything. And there's a part of this person that has too many burdens from not healing. So it winds up continually playing over and over and over again. And so the old habits are pretty much avoidance. And so of course you're kicking up a lot of this person's traumas. So why do we feel like we need to be warned about this person? Because what I feel like is obviously this person is coming back into your life. Otherwise, we would not be warned about it. But I want to just see again, Spirit says, yeah, they're seeing this again, seeing things from a different perception again. And there's a part of this person that's like looking for like serendipities. Like I feel like they were waiting in their mind for the perfect timing, right? For them to come back because there is this unconditional love there. It's not like there isn't. It's like, and like I said, Spirit saying, yeah, this person's gonna come in with communication. They're going to come in with communication, and partially it's because they're of who you are. It doesn't mean that they think that they're deserving to even come back, but they see you as such a good and nurturing person that that you would understand, that you would forgive them, that that you would take some sort of, again, have some sort of mercy on them, and they would, and help them, right? Because they're in this hardship right now, but there's a sense of wanting to fix it, wanting to not just, and I feel like they feel like their healing is with you. And I feel like these are things that you had to overcome. And it's something that you overcame from integrating it within yourself. So it's almost like you feel like you're connected to a person that at one time you resonated with this person's energy. And not because you wanted to, but because there were people in your environment that kept you in a place of guilt and shame. And so when we overgive and we abandon ourselves, what we do is we try to get that fulfillment outside of ourselves, which will always eventually put us back into this energy of shame when it's done to the extent that could mean you went over shopping and now like you have all these bills. Again puts you in a place of shame, not being able to pay your bills or just settling for less. Like there's always like this imbalance in spirit saying what you did was you healed those things. This person, I believe, made you heal those things. This person now sees the change inside of you, and now they are looking at themselves and they feel like, well, if you did it, well, then I can do it. And they want to do it. And they want to do it because this person has gone through another ex like they're in a place of guilt and shame from like humiliation, from public ridicule. So I feel like this person either lost their business, they might have went through like this horrific divorce where they lost their money, they lost their stability. There's a sense of them like ruining everything in their life. And so, yes, there is unconditional love with you. And I feel like now they're in a place where, hey, there's nowhere else to go but up, right? Because they've destroyed everything. That means relationships, that means whatever business, whatever money, whatever, like this person like is pretty much a shell of who you knew them to be, and is what Spirit's saying. And because of that, they've had to go within. They've had to do some real self-examination. They've had to do that healing. I feel like you've already done that healing. And so what it is like now you're in a place of being able to like step into this new energy of, I feel like, not like, oh, you're winning, but it's like you're not in an upswing in your life because you've been putting the energy into yourself. You're becoming your true self, where you're no longer in the energies of guilt and shame, and people can't put you back there. This person wanted to put you back there because that's where they are. But there's unconditional love there. And so I feel like because you've changed, you're making this person change. And it's because they're lonely, they feel isolated, they feel closed off from everyone, they feel disconnected, which is what's going to happen with guilt and shame. You're going to feel like you're not good enough, you're not worthy, but the only thing that could actually really heal that is unconditional love. And again, this person is still very emotionally connected to you. There's still this telepathic connection, and that's the issue. That's what's actually helping this person heal. It's making them grow, and it's because there's this emotional force that's pulling them to do so, which is what soulmate connections do. So it looks like there was a lot of disruption in this person's life, that it's like their life is, like I said, destroyed. Not this person's not where they were. So if anything, they're in a place of guilt and shame now. And being that they're in a place of guilt and shame, that means that they were bound to somebody, and that they were again utilizing all their energy to help whatever that person or that situation, but they weren't feeding themselves. So again, then doing things outside of themselves, which justified, by the way, why people were taking advantage, because they're like, well, if you're going to go and cheat or gamble all the money or be disrespectful in this way, well, then you should be giving us all your energy, time, focus, and money. So again, it was keeping this person locked in this weird karmic loop that nothing would actually get them out of the situation except for an emotional connection. Um, right? Making whatever is hidden like need to come to the surface. And what's hidden is that this person's actually keeping themselves stuck in that energy. And so the situation is developing their character, where they know that it's time for them to take action, that too much time has gone by between you and this person, and they don't want to be sitting in that energy of guilt and shame anymore. They don't want to do it. So Spirit says you can expect to hear from them within a few weeks. That's why you're getting this message right now. They're breaking free from whatever the situation was that they were in. There's a part of them that feels like they're finding self, and they're changing, and I can't pronounce the word, enthusiastic about it. It's again about the change, because to be in the energy of guilt and shame, it's just so draining. But the only way people tend to stay in a place of guilt and shame is when they're surrounded by people that put them there, right, and make them feel responsible. And so again, we see the only reason why this person's really able to get out of this situation is because, hey, they feel this strong connection to you, and it's bringing out what has been concealed within them for a long time. Like it's like that for a long time, I believe that this karmic and the people that are around them and their situation and the demise of their life has like kept them occupied, right? It's again, so the situation now is that everything's becoming unmasked. Everything is becoming unmasked, and this person is actually feeling like they're in a place where they got sick because of it. They tried to hold everything together for a long time, and where they didn't have boundaries. But what they're seeing is I can't be everyone's everything. I have to like love myself enough to stop guilting myself. Whatever I did. I need to forgive myself. And that's the thing. This person wants to change directions. They want to get out of that energy. So even though they might not have been with anyone, like, because what I see is that this person was in a connection, the connection like ended and everything ended, and then they were just stuck in a place of guilt and shame, like, well, no one will want me because of the way that I was, and their desire to always be free. Because, hey, they get into a karmic connection where they're overgiving, overpromising, abandoning themselves, and then they don't have enough for themselves. And so then they're living more from this emotional realm, which will always bring you to your demise, especially because this person that has addictions. And that's because they're escaping life. And because no one can stay in that energy, Spirit's saying, now at one point you had that energy. Now you don't have that energy anymore, but because this person is so hyper fixated on you that within a few weeks they're going to call you. So you're heavy on their brain. And also you showed them a way that to be, which is like, you're not going to keep me in a place of guilt and shame. You're not going to do that to me. And you again left is you're inspiring this person to change. You're inspiring this person to heal. It's the fact that there is an emotional connection. So it's not that this person doesn't have a choice, but they want to believe in the impossible. They want to believe in love. They want a happy ending. There's still passion here. It's again, they want that intimacy. They want a love affair. It's like they want that. They've been in this energy of guilt and shame, so which means that they're not loving themselves. They don't like themselves. They haven't gotten love. And so there's a desire for that. And that's really what I believe is being uncovered, where this person for a long time felt like it was okay that they denied themselves, but they're not okay anymore denying themselves because, hey, they say that this is a real soulmate connection and there's a desire to get out of that energy. And Spirit says if you have dealt with that energy, guilt and shame from, again, being in a relationship or growing up in an imbalanced environment, then you're going to understand that because this person wants to come back, they're still going to have like predisposition to overgive and not really be balanced. So you're going to have to teach them through, again, having boundaries yourself because just because they don't want to be codependent doesn't mean that their habits and behaviorisms are still not based on codependency. You know, they are learning, but when there's a sense of, oh, I'm going to learn, it's like, how do you learn? You learn by the people that are in the environment. And I feel like you mastered this. You got out of guilt and shame. That's what's inspiring this person. And they're like, well, if you did it, I don't want to be in this energy either. And so Spirit says now we have to say, why did you attract this person into your life? We saw a little bit, but I want to see again that the guilt and shame, but what created the guilt and shame for you is what I want to know. That's what Spirit's saying. It's like what's important is we want to know what created that. Oh, too many. Okay. All right, we're gonna take those. And I think, all right, so Spirit's saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, like extra came out, but we're gonna take them because I never believe in mistakes. Usually I only take 6 or 7. I think 8 or 9 came out. And we see the first ones that came out were rage, support, disassociation, self-sabotage, guilt and shame, baby. That's what happens when we are carrying around guilt and shame from, again, this being around someone that's really angry all the time, has anxiety, makes us feel bad. Again, not letting us have our unique unfoldment process, and where you're overgiving and overdoing because, hey, the person's so angry that you're just trying to like survive in that environment. And in order to deal with it, you become detached, disassociated because there is no support. The support happens from you trying to create that safety. So you're not really anchored or rooted in the physical body. You're up in your head, nervous. And you actually would source the whole time because that was a traumatic response. Your needs were not getting met. You were neglected because that parent was dealing with so much anxiety. They had so much of their own wounding that over time, when you grow up in an environment where you're giving all your energy, what you're realizing over time is that you're being like, no matter how much you're doing again and how much you're giving, it's never going to be appreciated. That's number one, because you can't make somebody be happy. Someone that's rageful and angry to the point that they take it out on their children, or they can't be present for their children. Again, the child is going to try to do whatever they need to do to create like that safety. And that tends to be overgiving, overdoing, and feeling guilty if they do what they need to do. And then, God forbid, they make a mistake or they act like a child, they're going to be shamed for it, again, because that parent is already stressed out. So Spirit's saying the self-sabotaging behavior is the fact that you're putting all the time and energy into other people to, again, not feel guilty, not feel bad. Because you were conditioned by this angry, rageful parent. And now here it is, you're connected to a person that's dealing with that. But if you were, again, to be with that person during the time, you would have neglected yourself. They would have kept you in that negative energy. And there's always a lot of rage and anger when you inherit guilt and shame. Because you feel bad about yourself. And when you feel bad about yourself, you're not attracting good experiences. And you're perceiving that everyone else sees you that way when it's not true. And so then you tend to like look for other people to give you the time and energy instead of putting the time and energy into yourself, which is self-sabotaging, keeps you stuck in this energy of trauma. And it's mainly just because, again, everything's rooted in the fact that there was no anchor, that you're not rooted in self. And when we're rooted within ourselves, it means that we're grounded in ourselves and we have the spirit inside of us and we feel very connected to source. And Spirit saying it's like that's what gives us support. Otherwise, you stay disassociated, and that's where the fragmentation is. It's again where there's detachment, there's disassociation, which is I don't remember parts of my childhood. I don't remember because of that rageful parent, and I just remember trying to do and please that parent. That again, you're not forming your identity. What you're doing is you're inheriting that parent's guilt and shame. So it's not even an energy that you created. It's an energy that you grew up in an environment to abandon your own needs for survival purposes. So that's why Spirit's saying that the irony is the fact that if you would have gotten together with this person when they weren't ready, they would have not been able to give you anything. And not because they didn't want to, because they were stuck in a place of guilt and shame because of how they, how they conducted themselves in their previous relationship and they needed to heal. And so Spirit's saying, you still need to transmute that negative energy, and that's by, acknowledge what you have already gone through. Go with conviction. Know that you're a strong person. That's number one. You had to go through this situation by transmuting it. It's again, you did go through an experience where you grew up in that energy of guilt and shame. You needed to fully integrate it because you couldn't go back in time and deal with that parent. So you got this person and you kind of had to find your balance within it, or are going to have to find your balance in it. And that is where you love yourself. You choose yourself first. That this person hasn't earned it yet. You have to make them earn it. And that's by, using your voice and setting boundaries, express your feelings, express that what you want, that there's actually infinite possibilities, a lot of opportunities for you as long as you stay again, grounded and balanced because you've already transmuted the guilt and shame. This person can't do anything. They can't take you off your path. Spirit says you don't have to keep them in your life, but you don't have to be nasty to them either. It's to find your balance. You want to be and like again, have mercy for the person. It was the word. It's because that's going to help you to forgive. That's going to help you again transcend. Spirit says, even though it might not seem like this was the right situation to happen in your life right now, Spirit says you're actually on the right path. Even though it's the one that's not really traveled most, and it's because you're creating your own way. You're changing while you're on the path. So Spirit says now it's about taking bold action, take big steps that put you out of your comfort zone. And that means join different things, connect to different people and situations because you're not your shame, you're not your guilt. It means that you didn't create enough of your life. Remember, there's a space, and that space is nothing happened. I don't remember. That's because you were people pleasing. That's because you felt guilted into like being the fixer of the family because of that rageful parent. So again, take a bold action because it gets comfortable even though you weren't happy. There's a safety in, doing what everybody wants you to do, and so Spirit says time to act boldly because you want to fully integrate the spiritual lesson because you can't still be your guilt and shame. You still had guilt and shame because you didn't embody a new consciousness yet. You learned, but you're in the process of doing that, is why you've learned it. So you knew to set boundaries, which is changing that person. However, Spirit's saying a lot of changes done outside your comfort zone. It means that you have to go out into the world, try different things, connect to different people. You have to release control. You have to come to a place of surrender, know that you're divinely protected. So again, go into uncharted waters, venture with confidence so that you could again let go of who you thought you were to become who you are because you're not the environment that you grew up in of guilt and shame. Even though you attracted that person, that you again helped change that person. You already learned that lesson, but until again you transmute that negative energy by again becoming the energy that you want, embodying the new consciousness, you can't fully ascend life. You can't let go of those karmic patterns. They're going to continue to happen. The Spirit says, because you're a physical being having a human experience. That's why. And so we end off with one more for now, and that is one step at a time. Spirit says, be in the present moment, be in the now. See the mountain ahead and dedicate yourself to taking one small step at a time. You make your progress by staying focused on the present moment. Again, that's how things can get out of whack when you're not grounded and balanced. And so guilt and shame is one way that you would not stay balanced. So Spirit's saying, just be present and focus on the current task, and you remain, ease of your living, like you reside, you reign over it. And this is how you find your balance. You find your balance between each sphere of life. That you are the master of your daily life. You make time to nourish the spiritual and the physical, and you bring love to your world by fulfilling the needs of your body and soul. That's what you're supposed to be doing right now, and that's to help you cultivate inner strength, that nothing is going to move you from your goals, your dreams, to the path to light, that you have complete confidence in yourself. Again, not codependent. No one's going to guilt and shame you, making you feel that you need to be something that you're not. This person is trying to catch up to you. You don't have to be with this person either, Spirit's saying. But their plan is that some people will, some people won't. I'm not going to pull for it. understand. Um, because nothing is gonna that this person can't do anything one way or the other because you're not going to take yourself off that path, that you realize your innate qualities and your abilities and know that with God that you can do anything and all the power that you need is with inside of you, that you don't need that. So I feel like again you're inspiring this person to change when you actually also changed due to this person. So they were definitely a past life karmic connection. They definitely feel a connection to you because, hey, at the end of the day, they're looking around and they're saying, this was not an easy connection, but you at least were true. I still have a connection to you. It's like, and so Spirit saying it's going to be all up to you, but they can't stop you from doing anything. The key is to just stay focused and be in the present moment. And know again, with God, you can do anything. I'm going to leave that there. You let me know how you resonated, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.